Mary I was born on February 18, 1516, in Greenwich, England, the daughter of King Henry VIII and his first wife, Catherine of Aragon. Mary was their only surviving child, as Henry VIII's attempts to have a male heir had resulted in several stillbirths and miscarriages. Mary was baptized a Catholic and raised in the Catholic faith, which would have a significant impact on her life and reign. Her mother Catherine of Aragon was a devout Catholic, and she instilled her faith in Mary from an early age. Mary was a staunch Catholic throughout her life, and her efforts to restore Catholicism to England would be a defining feature of her reign. After her mother's death, Mary was declared illegitimate by her father, Henry VIII, and removed from the line of succession. However, after the death of her half-brother Edward VI, Mary was able to have her legitimacy restored and was declared queen. Mary's reign began in 1553 after she overthrew Lady Jane Grey, who had briefly been declared queen by the Protestant nobility following the death of Edward VI. Apart from the very brief reign of Lady Jane Grey, Mary was the first true queen of England. Lady Jane Grey was a Protestant who was declared queen by a group of Protestant nobles following the death of Edward VI. However, Mary was able to gather enough support to overthrow Lady Jane Grey and establish herself as queen. Mary's reign was marked by her efforts to restore Catholicism to England, including the burning of Protestants who refused to renounce their faith. Mary was deeply committed to her Catholic faith and believed that it was her duty as queen to restore Catholicism to England. She ordered the execution of hundreds of Protestants who refused to recant their beliefs, leading to her nickname, Bloody Mary. Around 300 Protestant heretics were burned at the stake, known as the Marian persecutions. These included Archbishop Thomas Cranmer, who was forced to watch his colleagues Ridley and Latimer being burnt at the stake. Cranmer later made several recantations, but on his last recantation to Mary, she refused it, and 6 months after Ridley and Latimer, the Archbishop was burnt at the stake, to make an example of him. Mary was married to Philip II of Spain in 1554, and the marriage was intended to create an alliance between England and Spain. However, it was deeply unpopular with the English people, who feared that England would become a Spanish colony and that Philip would attempt to convert England to Catholicism. Mary's attempts to have a child were unsuccessful, and she suffered several false pregnancies and miscarriages. Mary was determined to have a child to secure the succession, but she was unable to do so, which may have been a result of her many years of ill health. Mary's attempts to restore Catholicism were largely unpopular, as the people had become accustomed to the Protestant faith, and she faced several rebellions, including Wyatt's Rebellion in 1554. Mary's decision to execute Lady Jane Grey, in 1554, who had been declared queen in place of Mary, was controversial and led to accusations of cruelty. Lady Jane Grey was only 16 years old at the time of her execution, and many saw her as a victim of political intrigue. Mary's reign saw England become embroiled in further wars with the French. The Battle of St. Quentin saw her lose Calais, England's sole remaining possession on the European mainland. This was a bad blow to Queen Mary's prestige at home and abroad. Mary suffered from several health problems throughout her life, including migraines, stomach pains, and gout. Mary's health problems may have been caused by several factors, including stress, her many pregnancies and miscarriages, and possibly a genetic condition. Mary's half-sister, Elizabeth, was initially imprisoned in the Tower of London during Mary's reign, but was eventually released. Elizabeth was seen as a potential threat to Mary's reign. However, she was eventually released and allowed to live in relative freedom. Mary's reign saw the introduction of several important laws, including the Heresy Acts of 1554 and 1555, which made it a crime to deny Catholic doctrine. These laws were used to persecute Protestants who refused to convert to Catholicism. Mary was deeply committed to the Catholic faith and believed that the monastic orders were an important part of the Church. She sought to restore the monasteries that had been dissolved by her father, Henry VIII, and revive monasticism in England. Mary's reign ended with her death on November 17, 1558, after a 5-year reign marked by religious persecution and political unrest. Mary died of what was likely ovarian or uterine cancer, and she was succeeded by her half-sister Elizabeth, who would go on to become one of England's most famous monarchs. Despite her reputation as Bloody Mary, Mary is remembered by some as a devout and pious queen who was deeply committed to her faith and the restoration of the Catholic Church.